Hi, so we're back here with David Weekley, founder of PBWorks, and we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago at Startup Weekend. So you're making your rounds, but you have such a vast amount of knowledge about startups and entrepreneurship. We'd like to talk to you again. So David, let's talk about why you're here at the Women 2.0 conference.
Well, the simplest reason is that my girlfriend, Rebecca Lapon, is running the conference. But the longer reason is that I love supporting entrepreneurs, particularly women in technology. And it's just wonderful to be able to come to a conference where there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of female founders ready to go and start companies.
Do you think there's a different way that women approach startup entrepreneurship? Why is there such a perhaps difference with women founders versus men founders, or is there none?
Well, it's hard to say which differences are innate or due to environment, and that's not a debate that's helpful to get into. The fact of the matter is that in Silicon Valley, technology companies are kind of where a lot of the focus and concentration is these days. We're seeing that there's unfortunately not enough women graduating in computer science to produce a large number of technical founders. So trying to encourage girls to major in computer science in college is really, really important. One of the trends that I think is going to enable a lot more women to get into tech entrepreneurship is that a lot of the underlying tool bases, the more difficult technologies are being taken care of, and the focus is now on design and user experience. And those are areas where women are very, very, very strong historically. So I think that the playing field is getting leveled by the technologies that are out there. So you take a look at a lot of the companies that are on the show floor here today, and they're gorgeous, gorgeous websites. And Ron Conway actually said that he views UI as being the new IP, meaning that designability is really the thing that'll catapult the best startups to the pole position versus the startups with the most complex algorithm, for instance. So I think in that kind of a world, women start being able to disproportionately lead and step into place as very strong founders.
And what do you think was the one piece of technology or a group of technology that allowed the shift of focus from the back end to the user interface?
So I think some of that has to do with the evolution of the browser. So as we're seeing technologies like HTML5 and CSS3 to come to the forefront, it's possible to create beautiful websites. I think if you look back 10, 15 years ago, it required a lot of very obscure hacks to make a website that was anything close to beautiful, and usually it had a lot of rough edges, and it took a lot of very annoying detail-oriented technology work to try and make a website that was anything close to pretty. But browsers have gotten a lot more sophisticated, and so you can do things like have layers that are one on top of the other, where one layer is partially transparent, and automatically add gradients and rounded corners, and do all of this in the browser. So I think having end users able to consume an experience that is beautiful, because pretty much everyone now has browsers that are capable of using these rendering technologies, means that good design is possible in web browsers, that it's possible to make beautiful websites. And so therefore people with a design angle and a user experience angle are going to be able to very quickly get the lead in front of companies that merely have reasonable technology, but it's difficult to use.
And do you also think that now the masses are online, right? Do you think that also the users brought about this sort of advent in user interface and user experience?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things when you're creating a company is to have a lot of compassion for your users and to understand them well. And given that women comprise about half the online population at this point, that wasn't always the case, and are actually disproportionately represented in social media, I think having companies that understand that market, that understand those users really well, will help those startups succeed. So.
And do you find that your first startup, or your first successful startup, as you mentioned a few weeks ago, is PBWorks? Back then it was PBWiki.
Yes.
And do you think that the use of wikis is going to be more accepted among women developers?
So It's interesting because I think, even the word wiki at this point feels a little bit dated, and it's one of the reasons why we changed the name of our company from PBWiki to PBWorks. But that notion of collaborative development, of being able to have everyone be on the same page, is something that's very much been embraced, whether or not it's called a wiki. So you see people sharing Google Docs, for instance, and they don't call it a wiki. They don't say, oh, go check my wiki. It's just, no, here's a link to the document, and let's all work on it and update it so it's correct. So I think that kind of methodology of the wiki way has become ingrained into the way that we do things, even though we don't call it wiki anymore.
Excellent. And so also I've found that there are a lot of new languages in development that make it easier to program. And you also mentioned the HTML5, which is more of a standard programming language, but it has enabled people to make more beautiful websites. Yeah. But let's talk about the, for example, yesterday I read an article about the girlfriend of the founder of Instagram, and she learned for 2 months, she learned how to program to use the Instagram API to create a new filter just for Valentine's Day, to send it to an Instagram for your Valentine. What do you think about those new languages to make it easier for people with no development skills, women or men, to pick up?
So I think the general public is starting to realize that it's important to learn how to program. This is not some obscure technical skill that maybe a few people should know, but this is as essential as reading and writing. So you see things like the mayor of New York, Mr. Bloomberg, going and taking up Code Year at codeyear.com and learning how to program, right? This is becoming something where if you want to leverage your ideas, if you want your visions to be able to be brought into the world, you should learn to program. JavaScript is becoming the de facto language to go and learn as your first programming language, because every web browser on the planet supports JavaScript, and now there are a number of very serious back-end projects that also use JavaScript, notably Node.js, which is a technology that makes it possible to do very serious server-side programming in JavaScript. So you can learn one programming language, use it on the browser, use it on the client, and then also use it on the server. Right, so if you just learn this one programming language that's not that scary to learn, that you can go to Codecademy or Khan Academy and get these interactive tutorials to learn how to program in JavaScript. You learn that one language, and now all of a sudden, the world's your oyster.
And a lot of these developers learned on their own, right? That's what people need to know, is that they've actually sought out the knowledge.
That's right. Most developers that I know, particularly the good ones, but even the hobbyist ones, come at it from a love and passion perspective, and it's less that they've learned what they know in a formal setting, in a class, and it's more that they were curious and just wanted to explore. Like, hey, I wonder what's possible. And that kind of ethos is often referred to here as like the hacker way, the hacker ethic, as a lot of people are getting exposed to in the Facebook S1 filing.
Excellent. And we asked you one advice for startups. Maybe you can give us another one.
Boy, I would say learn how to program. It's not as scary as you think. And if you're sitting around waiting to find a technical co-founder, stop waiting. Never wait. Just go out and learn how to do it. And it'll be ugly, but the first versions of things always are. Napster was actually Sean Fanning's first Windows program. It was his way of teaching himself how to program in Windows. So the first couple versions had horrible, horrible crashes in them, and that was because he was just figuring it out. But it was such a good idea that it became very, very popular anyhow. And by the time it was becoming popular, he had enough financing to go and hire some professional developers to go and polish it. So just don't be afraid of turning out a first version that's a little hacky. It's okay if you're just figuring out how to program. Just get started, get shipping product, and put it in people's hands.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, David. Sure. Startup Live.